Well, hello, welcome to I Love Gay today. And we are, for our first time ever, in Birmingham in the UK with John Godbold. Godbold, how are you?
Godbold, yeah, hi, I'm very good, thank you. Don't worry, I've been called worse. My, my favourite was Good Blood, someone once called
oh,
me, which
oh,
I thought made me sound like a Viking. I love that, John Good Blood.
it does sound, it sounds strong. And yeah, I could see how they could grab that. They were speed reading. But you and I connected because you have this really fun, it's a blog and you're very strong on social media, Tales of the Second City. But yeah, tell us a little
Indeed.
bit about that.
Well, the first thing, the title of it,
Yeah,
I was considering various ideas. Usually when I'm walking the dog, it's where I get my best ideas.
yeah.
And I must admit, I very nearly settled on Diary of a Middle-Aged Sex Addict. I just thought, no, that's not quite right. That doesn't quite sum up what I want to write here.
Yeah,
And I suddenly thought, Tales of the Second City, because
yeah.
Birmingham, where most of the stories come from, is the UK's second city. And I thought, oh, it says gay because of the Armistead Maupin connection, and it says Birmingham, but without actually having to state both. And it just suddenly seemed like the obvious title.
Yeah.
And also it was a bit of an homage to my favourite author, of course. Maupin's a legend.
Yeah. No, it's great because it's subtle, yet immediately when anyone in the LGBT community sees that, they know exactly because we all know Tales of the City.
Yeah, and I'm very much, what's the expression, riding on his shirt tails.
But no, it's interesting because from the outside looking in, there's a lot of things I think we could talk about as far as from the UK perspective and from the outside. But I don't think most folks know Birmingham is the second largest city in the UK.
Yeah, yes it is. Manchester is the third city, and there's always a bit of rivalry between
Yeah,
the two. And
interesting.
especially in the 90s, where Manchester was sort of the cultural second city of the UK. It's where
Yeah,
a lot of good art and music particularly was coming from.
yeah.
The UK, art-wise, I mean, not very much gets filmed here.
Okay.
I think most people know Birmingham from the TV show Peaky Blinders,
Yeah, yeah.
which I was saying earlier, frustrates me a little bit because the actors in that show, none of them are Brummies, none of them are from Birmingham. And they're all trying to do the Brummie accent, but
Yeah,
they're just exaggerating it a bit too much and often come out sounding more like Wolverhampton, which is a city 20 miles down the road.
yeah.
A city I was born in, actually.
See, I was going
But
to say I could tell you're a local
yeah, to a degree.
because of your
Um,
passion.
yes, I actually was raised over in Sutton Coldfield, which is quite a
Okay.
middle class area of the city, to be honest.
Yeah.
And if I'd said things with a proper Brummie accent, like the bath and going to the garage and this sort of stuff, I think my mum would slap my legs. I was being told it's grass, not grass.
What was your inspiration? I mean, being from Birmingham, and what inspired you to start your blog and to start telling people about these adventures? And
I've always liked stories. I work as a storyteller, an oral storyteller in schools.
yeah,
But I've never been one for jokes. I don't like jokes particularly. I think there's that expectation of a laugh at the end, and I don't like being told jokes. I don't like telling them because of that pressure. You've got to laugh. You've got to laugh. But I love anecdotes. I love it when someone, a raconteur, just sits there and tells you a great tale, and I like doing it too.
yeah,
And I was actually out one afternoon, sat with a friend I hadn't seen for a while, and we were sat in the heart of Birmingham's gay village on her street in the sun, and I started to tell her a few things that happened to me recently,
yeah,
particularly inspired by a young Indian guy that I'd met in a club called Bolts, which is probably Birmingham's most daring club.
yeah,
Anything goes. There's glory holes, there's dark rooms. It has, it's fetish nights, etc.
yeah,
But within this environment, this salubrious environment,
yeah,
I met this young lad who I just found inspirational and hilarious. And he told what was initially a very poignant story about being abandoned really by his family after he was outed in his own community back in India, and then how that turned around. And I won't say anything more about it because I'd like people to read the blog. It was the first one I wrote. It was called suitably "Finding the Gems" because he really was a gem in the dark corners of Bolts.
yeah,
And that's what started it. I was saying to my friend, and she said, "Oh, you should write these down."
yeah.
I thought, actually, I will, but really for my own benefit. I didn't think anyone was going to be interested, and I knew nothing about blogging whatsoever. So I found a blog site. I think I put on Facebook, the collective mind out there. What's a good blog site to use, and people were recommending WordPress. That came back several times. So I thought, okay, that's one I'll go for.
Yeah.
And I started to write my anecdotes, my stories, my encounters, so that I wouldn't forget them, really. And then quite quickly, people started liking them and sending me messages. And as you said, people from all over the world were reading them.
Yeah.
And although they're Birmingham based, that's a big part of the stories, they were clearly resonating with people around the world, because it's about the gay community.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it doesn't matter where you are, whether it's Birmingham, UK or Birmingham, Alabama. It's the gay community it's about. And I'll often say that I'm writing all of our tales. A few people have said to me, oh, so much has happened to you. I went, not really. It's just I'm taking the time to reflect on some of the things, find the funny moments in them, and write them. I think everyone could sit down and write their tales, really. Yeah. I do jokingly say to people that I'm writing about the places, predicaments, and people I've been in. But in all fairness, I'm not writing a sex blog. If you want erotic fiction, it's not the right place. Quite early on, a friend of mine who was reading it did say, you don't go that far with the sexual side of things.
Yeah.
And you certainly don't swear unless it's appropriate or has impact. I was like, yeah, that's true, actually. I hadn't clocked it myself.
Yeah.
Right. It does help that my sister and my family read the blogs as well.
Yes.
My nieces and nephews read it. And they are, admitted, they're adults. The youngest of them is 26, my nephew. But having that in the back of your mind is a good editing tool.
Yes. Keeps you a little bit more tame.
It does. Just think, I don't want my sister to read that.
I understand.
I'll cut that there. I'll cut that story there. Leave that to the imagination.
As I was saying earlier, with the passion you have for it, I mean, that's why it really comes out, not only in this interview, but also just in your work. But there's things that the rest of us don't know also, that the local term affection, you're a Brummie. And
Brummie,
does everyone in the UK know this? Except
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
We are the Brummies.
Yeah, but I've noticed.
Sorry, Birmingham is referred to as Brum by the locals.
Okay. Yeah, no, ever since when we launched, because we knew it was important. So with the ILoveGay network, we launched just recently ILoveGay Birmingham, but because you can't write Birmingham, it's too long to put in there. So we looked at what could we do, and we decided upon, we realized Brum was such a positive and affectionate term, so it's ILoveGay Brum, and we've noticed ever since launching that there's an added passion. There's a lot of activity of folks in Birmingham, whether it's for sports and whatever it may be in the LGBT community. They're very strong, especially on social media when it comes to collaborating with each other.
Right.
Yeah, and you're a part of that.
I know, and through the blog, I've been invited to various gallery openings and events and chats like this. It's been great, and it's a real surprise. As I said, it was something I wrote really for my own amusement.
Yeah.
Although once I got going, I really thought, I filled a notebook. I thought, I've got enough for a couple of dozen blogs. I'll go for a year. Well, it's coming up now to 2 years. I started January 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And of course, new things happen and new stories generate all the time. And also topical issues. Suddenly we were faced with lockdown. And I felt I had to cover that. I was there on Her Street in the heart of the gay village the night that everything closed, and we were all told to go to our rooms, and I literally saw the lights going off and all the shutters coming down on all the bars and clubs, and it was horrible. I mean, actually just saying it there, I just got a shiver. It was just watching that one street, that one vibrant, crazy, eclectic street closing down and switching off, just seemed to be a metaphor for what was going on around the whole world. And I came home and I wrote a blog about the people I saw on that night, because as I left one bar, I just paused in the doorway and I looked around, and we didn't know what was coming. And I thought, how many of these people am I going to see again on the other side of this?
Yeah.
Because that's what it felt like. When the first lockdown came, we really didn't know what on earth we were in for.
Yeah.
And then there were other issues of pub closures because of the situation with the hospitality industry. Yeah. So I covered those. We then had a knife attack in the heart of the gay village, which initially seemed like it was a homophobic attack. It wasn't. It was someone who was disturbed, had mental health problems, and they went on a rampage through Birmingham city one night,
Yeah.
and her street just happened to get in the way, sadly. But that said, then there has been an increase in hate crime in Birmingham, and that's an issue I was slightly hesitant about tackling until one incident outside a bar, where two guys were attacked, and then they put the mugshots on social media and the press, and I suddenly realised I knew two of the attackers.
Oh, wow.
And I wrote about it. One of them actually is currently still working on a house at the end of my road, that's been renovated, and so then I knew I had to write a blog covering it, because it had a personal connection to it.
No, it's interesting because everything you're talking about, see, in a previous world, just a few years ago, I would have never known about these things because it didn't really make the mainstream news here in the US. But because of Twitter, I was fully immersed in it. There was so much activity, and the not just the protests, but the marches and the gatherings that you had in Birmingham there about these hate crimes. It found a global audience, and that I was able to watch and see all of that unfold.
Yeah, again, I quite often say to people that I'm shining a light on a scene unseen.
Yeah.
Although I'm very conscious as well, because I'm writing about real people on the scene.
Yeah.
And I do change names, and I do change elements of their description, so that it's not too obvious who they are, unless it's someone I know, actually, unless it's people that I'm connected with, and I will actually say, look, you feature in the next blog I've written. Can I send you it? And so I'll send you the copy and get their approval.
Yeah.
And I've got to say, that's the most nervous moment, is that waiting for them to get back, thinking, I hope I haven't lost a friend over this. I hope I haven't lost a friend over this. And without exception, everyone's come back and said, no, that's great.
Yeah.
And in fact, the only person who was asked for anything to be changed, he asked for me to write a detail that was a bit filthier than I was actually prepared to write. He wanted more detail in there.
There you go.
There's one story I called The Boy with Hearts in His Eyes, who's a friend of about 6 years. In fact, he's coming here tomorrow for Christmas Day.
Yeah.
And I wrote a story about him and how we first met, and his first ever encounter with the scene. He's only 26, so his first time out on the scene, and what a big deal it was for him, particularly coming from a Muslim family. And I saw him a few days beforehand and said, okay, I've written this blog about you. Again, I'll send it to you, but just to warn you, it's half love letter and half character assassination. So
Yeah.
I hope you're okay with this.
You have a great style with all this, and what's interesting, we were talking earlier about Twitter too, and you have a fun not just a style, but a thing going on with, can you identify this venue? And a lot of your posts. Is that working well for you?
Yeah, I got 15 days in and regretted starting it. My
I love it.
Birmingham Gay Scene Advent calendar.
Yeah.
And I've just gone around and taken quite obscure photos from funny odd angles of pretty much all the bars, and then just seeing if people can recognize them at all. But as I said, 15 days in, I thought, oh, what have I started? I can't stop now.
It's great because it engages with your audience.
Yeah.
No, it engages with your audience. It brings people in, and it puts you at the center of, it's a hot topic with hashtag LGBT history. So it puts you in the middle of all that.
Yeah, Christmas hashtag. I'll be totally honest here. The last blog I wrote was a bit of a departure. I called it Sex in the Second City.
I saw that.
And it was really because I knew I had some stories to tell about in my early 20s visiting New York for the first time.
Yeah.
But also a couple of tales about Kim Cattrall. And I thought, I'm going to definitely get this released on the 9th of December, knowing full well that was the release date for the new Sex and the City series. And just like that, just so I could shamelessly use those hashtags. And it did work. I got a lot of readers for that one.
Excellent.
But whenever I write, though, there are some where I write about going away to Brighton for Christmas periods, or I've got 2 linked blogs coming out at some point next year about Australia.
Okay.
But I'm conscious that it is Tales of the Second City, so there will always be Birmingham links in there somewhere to bring it back.
I personally I was just gonna say I love what you're doing. So I would say keep
But
it up.
staying with the Sex and the City theme, I don't want to be Sex and the City 2, which just lost its way and went to Dubai.
No, no, you don't want to
I don't want to be that. No one wants to be Sex and the City 2 ever.
I agree, and I grew up watching all those in the was it the 90s, early 2000s. Whenever HBO in the I don't think no, but whenever HBO and the little thing comes up, the first thing I think of is immediately the intro song to Sex and the City.
Yeah, definitely.
Near and dear to our hearts.
But there was another story that I realised was really important to tell,
Yeah.
and I found it quite difficult to sit down and write it, to be honest. But where I live, we're talking about protests for the anti-hate crime protests. But 3 years ago, I live on a road where there was a school, one of two schools in Birmingham, that faced anti-LGBT protests at the school gates for 7 months. So every night, 4 till 6 o'clock, dozens, if not at points, we had 300 protesters in our street because the school at the end of the road dared to acknowledge that gay people exist. Okay. Their policy is that everyone is equal and there are no outsiders, and that if somebody has same-sex parents, then that is discussed and mentioned. It's not lectured. It's not a topic that is on the curriculum. It's just acknowledging that gay people exist. But because of this, there was huge protests, and you can imagine living as an openly gay couple on the street, and our next door, 5 doors down, is a single gay guy. It was horrible. It was absolutely vile. Literally having that sort of homophobic attitude on your doorstep. And I knew I had to tell that story. I think I wrote 4 linked blogs, which I then put together as a blog called Birmingham's Busiest Quiet Road. Because when I first moved into this house 15 years ago, I knew one of the neighbours from years ago, and their first words to me were, "Welcome to Birmingham's Busiest Quiet Road," and they never knew just how prophetic that was going to be.
Yeah,
really.
Now you know.
But it was a horrible period, and it culminated in a night which did get covered in the press, but not as much as it should have done, where some LGBT supporters came to the school to put rainbow flags up on the gates because the school had got a visit from a politician the next day.
Yeah.
And word got out that the LGBT community were putting up posters and tying ribbons. Within 10 minutes, cars came screeching into the road, which is essentially because of the school gates cul-de-sac. 30 masked guys came out with batons and didn't physically attack them, but verbally attacked them. Our houses had rainbow flags hanging in the windows, about 4 of them on the road, and we all got egged.
Yeah.
And the police came after they dispersed it all, went to the riot police. It was just horrendous.
Wow.
And the police came to our door and just said, "Look, we're saying this to all the houses with the rainbow flags. We're so sorry we have to say this to you, but we can't make you do it, but we advise you take them down." Because the last thing we heard them saying as they left is they're going to be back with bricks to follow the eggs.
Yeah.
And all of us just said, well, we made our point, but we can't put ourselves any more at danger. And then, of course, I had a different outlet where I could tell that story on the blog.
Yeah. Well, it just shows that there's still work to be done, and it's going to. Fortunately, I do believe that, and hopefully you can. Things aren't getting better, but it's not a smooth road or a smooth progression.
No.
But no, that's why it's important to have voices like yours out there.
But on the whole, I like to think the blog is lighthearted. It's heartwarming. It's normally about funny incidents. Yeah. With a slightly cheeky twist.
I love that. Well, no, like I said, it's really I love what you're doing, and I'm really glad that you were able to take a few moments of your time to kind of share some of your story and what you're up to with our audience, because I'm looking forward to continuing on with what you're going to be posting here in 2022.
Great. Well, this is certainly the first face-to-face chat I've had of this nature, because up until this moment, I've been writing the blog anonymously.
Yeah.
I've always referred to myself as the Banksy of blogging, but hey, I've blown that cover. Hey, folks, it's me.
This is your official social media coming out.
Yeah, it is. It is indeed. I mean, I have spoken to several of the venue owners that run the clubs and bars in Hurst Street, and sort of outed myself. Said, "Yeah, actually, it is me." And thanks for sharing, because a lot of them have. They've shared the blogs, and they've been really supportive of it, to be honest. And I do feel an obligation when I'm writing the blog to show the scene in the best possible light. And being very aware that this is people's businesses. I wrote a blog recently about of all things, I broke up a fight in the middle of a dark room, which is the last place you want a fight. People have got their soft delicates out. They don't want fist throwing, not in that way anyway. I broke up this fight, but I was very conscious in the blog of saying that sort of incident is a real rarity. I didn't want it to reflect badly on the club at all.
Yeah, no, good point. Well, no, mostly thanks so much for being here. It's wonderful to, and I look forward to hopefully being able to connect in the real world someday soon.
Oh, that was fantastic.
Well, thanks so much, and we'll talk to you soon.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.
So good.